What happens to your wages when your employer suddenly goes bankrupt? Could you be left with nothing? The Fair Entitlements Guarantee might be your financial lifeline. When you first hear your employer has gone under, that feeling of being completely lost and overwhelmed is totally normal, like you're suddenly drowning in uncertainty with no idea which way is up. In this video, you'll learn everything you need to know about claiming unpaid entitlements after company insolvency. I'll cover the complete Fair Entitlements Guarantee process, from eligibility to payment. We'll explore the 5 eligibility requirements, the 5 types of entitlements you can recover, maximum payment limits, and the 5-step application process. I'll even share a real example of someone who successfully claimed thousands in unpaid wages and entitlements. So what exactly is the Fair Entitlements Guarantee? Simply put, it's an Australian government scheme that steps in when your employer goes into liquidation or bankruptcy and can't pay what they owe you. Think of it as a safety net that catches workers when companies collapse. Now let's talk about who can actually claim the Fair Entitlements Guarantee. There are 5 main eligibility criteria you need to meet. First, you need to be an Australian citizen, permanent resident, or hold a special category visa at the time you lost your job. If you're on a temporary work visa, unfortunately you won't be eligible for FEG. Second, your employer must have formally entered liquidation or bankruptcy. This is really important. If the company has just closed down but hasn't officially gone into liquidation, you can't access FEG yet. You'll need to wait until a liquidator is appointed. Third, timing matters. You have to lodge your claim within 12 months of either losing your job or your employer going into liquidation, whichever happens later. Miss this window and you could lose your right to claim, so don't delay. Fourth, you must have been an actual employee, not a contractor. This distinction is crucial because contractors aren't covered by FEG. If you're unsure about your employment status, check your tax records. If your employer was withholding tax, you were probably an employee. And fifth, you can't be what's called an excluded employee. This means if you were a director of the company or a relative of the director, you might not be eligible. The government wants to make sure the system isn't being taken advantage of by company insiders. Now on to the most important question. What exactly does the Fair Entitlements Guarantee cover? FEG will help with 5 types of unpaid entitlements. First, unpaid wages, but only up to 13 weeks' worth. So if you're owed more than that, you'll only get 13 weeks covered by FEG. Second, annual leave that you've accrued but haven't taken or been paid for. The good news is there's no cap on this, so all your untaken annual leave should be covered. Third, long service leave that you've earned but haven't received payment for. Again, this should be covered in full. Fourth, payment in lieu of notice, up to a maximum of 5 weeks. This is the money you would have earned if you'd worked through your notice period. And fifth, redundancy pay, up to 4 weeks per year of service. This is perhaps the most significant benefit for long-term employees who would otherwise miss out on substantial redundancy payments. It's really important to understand what FEG does not cover. Superannuation is a big one. Unpaid super contributions aren't covered by FEG. If your employer hasn't been paying your super, you'll need to contact the ATO separately about that. FEG also won't cover bonuses, commissions, expense reimbursements, or other benefits outside standard entitlements. Let's walk through how to actually apply for the Fair Entitlements Guarantee. It's a 5-step process. Step 1. Double-check your eligibility using the criteria we just discussed. No point going through the application process if you don't qualify. Step 2. Gather all the documents you'll need. This includes proof of employment like your contract or payslips, bank statements showing wages, and communication from the liquidator confirming the company's insolvency. Having these ready will make the process much smoother. Step 3. Submit your claim through the FEG Online Services portal on the Australian Government's website. If you're not comfortable with online applications, paper forms are still available, but the online process is typically faster. Step 4. Wait for your claim to be assessed. This is often the hardest part. Processing times vary, but most claims take around 16 weeks to process. That's 4 months, which I know feels like forever when you're waiting for money that's rightfully yours. If your situation is particularly urgent, you can contact the FEG hotline to explain your circumstances. Step 5. If your claim is approved, payment will be made directly to your bank account. Make sure your banking details are correct when you apply to avoid any delays. And here are a few extra considerations that might apply to your situation. If you've already received some redundancy payment from another source, like a union fund, this might affect how much you can claim through FEG. Be upfront about this in your application to avoid complications later. If there are disputes about your claim, don't hesitate to seek legal or financial advice. Community legal centres or your union or associations often provide free assistance with FEG claims. And remember, while superannuation isn't covered by FEG, you shouldn't just forget about it. Contact the ATO for help recovering any unpaid super contributions. I want to share a quick real-world example. Sarah worked as a retail manager for a clothing store that went into liquidation last year. She was owed 6 weeks of wages, 4 weeks of annual leave, and would have been entitled to 8 weeks of redundancy pay based on her years of service. Through FEG, Sarah was able to recover all of her annual leave, 6 weeks of her unpaid wages, and 8 weeks of redundancy pay. This amounted to thousands of dollars that helped her stay afloat. Certainly a great outcome for Sarah. The Fair Entitlements Guarantee is there to protect workers during what's often an incredibly stressful time. Losing your job because your employer has become insolvent is tough enough without having to worry about lost wages and entitlements. The Fair Entitlements Guarantee won't solve all your problems, but it can provide crucial financial support while you get back on your feet. Remember, time limits apply, so if your employer has gone into liquidation, start the FEG claim process as soon as possible, and don't be afraid to reach out to the FEG hotline if you have questions or need assistance with your claim.